So today we want to talk about the abductor hallucis muscle as well as exercises for hallux valgus. Hallux valgus is where your big toe is pushing sideways like this, causing an angulation outwards of the big toe, and in many cases will also cause some enlargement as well as potential discomfort on the big toe joint right here, because of the fact that that causes the first metatarsal to push out more, and as it rubs against the shoe it could become uncomfortable. And many times what happens is, as a result of this toe having been pushed over for such a long time, the abductor hallucis is not strong, so you're not actually able to straighten that toe back out. So oftentimes there's not enough strength within the abductor hallucis. It runs attaches into a tendon right along the inner side of the big toe, and the muscle, being kind of on the inner side of the arch, is not strong enough to pull that big toe back out. And many times there's also a tightness in the tissues between your big toe and your second toe. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to reduce tension in the muscle tissue as well as the fascia tissue between the big toe and the second toe by not necessarily just massaging it, but by releasing the tension. And that's the purpose of this video today, is to teach you how to release tension in these tissues to allow the big toe to start gravitating over. And then obviously you want to work on strengthening those muscles in the arches, the abductor hallucis especially, to bring that toe back outwards and then help realign your toes. So how do you work on loosening the tissue in between these metatarsal bones? So you have 5 metatarsal heads, which make up the ball of the foot. And there's metatarsal shafts, which basically make up the metatarsal arch, and then you have the base, which attaches into the metatarsal joints right here. And what we want to do is we want to release tension in here. Now, oftentimes, if you're pushing in here, you may not necessarily feel any discomfort, and what you will have to do is you will have to provide some counter pressure on the bottom of this to be able to feel any kind of tension in there. And ideally what you do is, as you find a tender spot where there's discomfort and tension, you want to release that tension by moving your toes up and down, ideally 10 times. As we don't want you to be doing this all day, so the idea is to find those tender spots and release them by moving those toes slowly up and down 10 times. And then you move through this area to continue doing this until you find kind of that last spot and you get to the mid-tarsal joints, which you'll feel resistance here because there's bones there. So obviously there's no tissue there that you're really releasing. So once you get to that point, you stop and you move forward. But always make sure you have some counter pressure on the bottom to really be able to release the tension in these tissues. Now, if you have issues trying to bend down, you can use what we call a pencil. So this is just a regular pencil, and it has a pencil eraser on the back of it right here. And the purpose of that eraser is that it's obviously softer, so as you're trying to push into the tissue, you're able to also rotate it around and find some of those more tender spots. So as you're going through the tissue and you rotate this pencil around, ideally again having some counter pressure, you find a tender spot, and then again you release the tension by moving those toes up and down 10 times. And then not only is this loosening up the fascia tissue and break it up under the pressure, but it also, so I'm going to move this forward a little bit so I have counter pressure on the opposite side of where the pencil is pressing, but it also helps to obviously stimulate circulation into the area. Now you can do this in between the big toe and the second toe. You can also move into the second and third metatarsal, and oftentimes this is where the pencil really comes in handy because it's a bit narrower than your finger might be, so it actually does a better job at releasing some of those tensions, and you can really loosen up those tensions in there to help allow everything to spread out more easily and prevent the tissues from pulling the toes out of alignment. Now, if you don't have the ability to actually reach under the foot to give you some counter pressure, you can always use a firm surface, either a ball or a block of some kind of foam to do the same thing, and then you can have that way some counter pressure on the bottom, and then do that release exercise the same way, obviously on a block of foam. Ideally, I would use probably a ball, maybe a lacrosse ball or a tennis ball, to create that extra counter pressure so you can move it around more easily. because the block obviously is a little bit harder. And if you find that the block is not doing a good job, you might want to put it onto the edge of it just to get more counter pressure into the right spot, because you'll be able to get the counter pressure to line up with where your finger is pressing. But anyway, that's how you want to release the tension in between the toes to help improve the alignment of the big toe over time.